Nope, we're not. Now we are. Okay. So let's get into it, shall we? First order of conversation is, let's get into the servicing and marketing of our business, shall we? And so here's what we've done, right? We set the expectations. We've went on the appointment. We were able to get on the appointment. Right? We held a consultation and we took the listing. Okay, so great. We did the heavy lifting. Now, okay, how do we make sure that we get to the result that we intend to be at by offering the experience to the client that we choose to? So we're at step 4 of the 7-step process. Okay, so step 4 of the 7-step process. And so just be aware of that, right? So our goal really is to market the home to as many potential buyers and potential sellers as we can, right? Because one thing that I heard, who told me this? There was a great agent in another session I was involved in, and she's been in the business, 36 years, and still loving every day of it. And what she mentioned was, she said, for every listing that you take, like if nothing else matters in the business unless you have your name on a sign, right? Because when you have as many names, if you have enough names, your name on a sign as possible, you can literally fund your business however you want, fund your personal life. And so people call people whose names are on signs. So if you want more seller listings, take listings, market those well, and you'll generate more seller listing opportunity. So it's really a mindset. And by the way, I would really, if some of you say, well, hey, I don't have anybody that I could, talk to, I would push back on that. Jump in your cell phone. If you even just look at your cell phone right now, 60% of the people in your cell phone across the national average are homeowners, right? 60% of the national average of adults out there are homeowners already, right? And so that means on average, and California is like 54%. So in California, if a lot of your people are California-based, about half of everybody in your cell phone right now owns a property, depending on the demographic of where you're at, and that's climbing, right? Climbing. So where are we? So that's our first dialogue. So servicing, let's go ahead and look over the big picture, right? We got the big picture of servicing. So asking for participation, you've got this on your page 75. All right, so page 75 of your student manual. Can I have somebody read that first paragraph right underneath servicing the big picture? Who's going to kick it off?
I'll kick it off.
James, do it.
Servicing customers and marketing their properties is the step of the cycle that defines the customer experience the most. Service elements wrap around everything you do for your sellers, build trust between you and your client, and create clients for life. Masters know that great customer service is their highest value. This is where you deliver on or exceed all the promises and expectations you set up in the previous steps.
Love that. And so, here's a great quote from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book on page 93. Virtually every top producing agent we have, virtually every top producing agent we have ever worked with has a deep and almost inherent sense of service. They have a servant's heart and a place that their buyers or sellers real estate experience above, and they place their buyers and sellers real estate experience above all else. They are always thinking service. And that's where we need to be, because otherwise, if we're not thinking service, what are you thinking? What are you thinking if you're not thinking service? If you're not prioritizing service, what are you thinking?
Well, you would be thinking just selfishly about yourself. It's just a commission breath transaction.
Oh yeah, that's all I was looking for. It's just that commission breath. It's just a funny thing to say, and yet that's true. Sometimes we lead with that, and it warps our minds a bit. And so, thinking service first. And I love what Gary Keller said: "Service first, sales second" is the mantra. Right? Service first, sales second is the mantra. You offer great service, and you come with contribution, the sales show up. Great point. Great point. And so 3 levels of service, right? So Gary Keller, as top agents know that, the service is the heart and soul of the transaction. So we've got 3 areas, right? 3 levels of service. We got purpose, value prop, and then fiduciary. So we're going to jump into each one. So the purpose, can I have somebody read the purpose? Masters of Service.
I'll read it.
Thank you.
Masters of Service have a clear understanding of why they should be hired and can articulate it to anyone at any time. Great service begins with a clear purpose for why someone should work with you. Remember your unique selling proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that actually tees up the next dialogue. So the value proposition, very best real estate agents are able to translate the purpose and the reason people should hire them into a specific set of services they will provide. The value proposition lays out in detail the services sellers will receive. So big. And so, by the way, and I've said this in the past, and yet if you haven't done it yet, if you haven't taken the time to add to your listing presentation, and by the way, who here has a seller listing presentation that they've, a template at the very least? Who here has one? So Sandy, you got one. Mercedes, you got one. Oh, Sandy, you said no, or you did?
I do, but I'm trying to figure out how to mute my.
I got you. So you're muted. Who else? So Mercedes has one. Anyone else? Anybody else have a seller listing presentation? And if you don't, it's all right. Be honest. And then I got a solution for you here. I just want to have an idea of how many people don't have one. So throw in the chat box if you do not have a seller listing presentation.
Yeah, I don't have one yet.
You don't have one yet? Okay.
I have to work on that.
No, I don't either. No.
Okay. Samantha, anyone else? Okay, Jen. Thank you. Anyone else? Terry, Judy, good. I appreciate it because I just want to make sure we're, people are listening. To be honest, right? It's like want to make sure we're actually having a dialogue here, and because this is going to help me, right? So, by the way, yes, Michael Lewis Marketing Suite. So, Cynthia, you hit the nail on the head. Michael Lewis Marketing Suite. That is a great system that you can use to build your seller listing presentation. So Ryan, I don't know if you have that handy. I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. And yet, if you would be able to share how, just throwing it in the chat box, any one of our people can get access to this, the seller, the Michael Lewis marketing. Let's go ahead and add that on there. All right, so just kind of quick little details about how to get it, how to download it, and all the above. I think that'll go a long way. So I'll touch. We'll see if Ryan can help us look into that. Great. So now, at the very minimum, by the way, and if you, just in case, oh, thank you, Cynthia. So Cynthia just put it in the chat box. The Michael Lewis Marketing Suite. I believe we all need to have a link. I'm sorry, passwords and all that. So worst case scenario, Ryan can help you out with figuring out how to get the passwords to that. And so Ryan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, real quick. Cynthia made my job so much easier. Oh my God, thank you. Yeah, so for Michael Lewis Marketing Suite, you should have your password be MLMS password unless you've reset it. Already.
Okay.
But I'll type that into the chat here. So it should be MLMS password. Unless you've already reset it, then I don't know what it's going to be because it's a customized password just for you.
Now, is that like case sensitive at all?
I don't think so. I think once you reset it, it's case sensitive, but that's universal. When we set it up, that's how we set up your password until you decide to change it.
I gotcha. Great. So thank you for that. So that'd be a reminder is go into Michael Lewis Marketing Suite and under free stuff, right? Under free stuff, you can go out there and download your very own buyer as well as seller presentation. Everybody has access to this now, starting now. So If some of you have just first time logging in, I believe it says like account not active or something like that. So you may need to go out and get your account activated. So just be aware of that. So go out and do that, and go to page 95. And we talked about this last time. And if you didn't recall, and there's no way you would have been able to implement it if you don't have a seller listing presentation, is by putting on your page 95 the 10 service areas of a seller listing agent, right? And so be very clear about what the 10 service areas are of a seller listing agent. It's on your page 95 of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. So that's a great resource to utilize. So that way, you know, that way you can literally put into conversation when people ask you, well, hey, what do you pay? Like, what do you get charged? What do you get for, you know, the 6%, right? What do you offer me for the 6% that I'm charging you, or that you're charging me? And you can go specifically down the line and offer some strategy about, okay, here's what you get for that amount. Because otherwise you're telling. Somebody said this, and I mean, this is a great friend of mine, and he does great business in out of Colorado, Denver, 100 million in production and annually. And he said, this is not a tell me market. This is a show me market. So the days of walking into a listing presentation and just kind of winging it and talking about it, you might be able to get away with that with your SOI, and yet for the everyday person or the other people out there, maybe not. Okay, so just sharing that with you. So this is a show me market. Have a presentation that you can use and dial in, so that way you're good. You're good otherwise. So that's that. Okay, so value proposition. So our next conversation is around being a fiduciary. So being a fiduciary, can I have somebody read being a fiduciary? So number 3, fiduciary, highly productive agents, starting there. Who's going to do it? Who's going to help us out today? Who's going to help us out today? This is on your page.
I'll read it.
76, fiduciary, highly productive agents.
Okay, I'm ready. I'll read it.
Let's do
Ready?
it. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you great.
Okay, highly productive agents have a level of service they provide that goes beyond their own purpose and value proposition. It is a commitment they make to their clients to act as a true fiduciary, to place the seller's interests ahead of their own, of the interests of all others, even their own. A fiduciary brings an added level of trust and care to the relationship that a regular functional agent does not. Wow.
Yeah, and you know what? And that right there is on page 96 of the MREA as well, right? So page 95 and 96 for this conversation could be some of the most important conversation that we can have around this subject. So if you look at on that page 96, what stands out to you the most on that page? Right, especially when we look at what sellers want the most, what stands out to you as we're having this conversation? What stands out to you the most on page 76? What sellers want the most? Talking purpose, talking value, talking fiduciary, being a true fiduciary. What stands out the most to you?
We're talking about in this market or in general? Because I feel like some of these would be
Well,
more important.
Yeah, in general. I'm
gonna say price.
Yeah, price. Yeah, price the home competitively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So helping your sellers price the home competitively.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah, because I think competitively, because a seller's gonna have in mind what they're, what they want to net from their home, or what they would like, but that may not, what they might consider pricing it may not be competitive. It may be setting up, they may want to price it and it'll be at the peak, and that's just where it may sit, you know, or whereas you would come in and say, that's a good price, but to be more competitive, we should price it here and let buyers come in and, you know, bring the price up through offers.
Yeah, so price it competitively, to your point, right? Because otherwise, if we're not pricing competitively, we're pricing behind the market. At that moment, or pricing overly aggressive. And I mean, we know typically what happens then. It's like, it just, you don't get as much as you could. That's a good point. So here's a chart, you know, I don't think this is in the material, so we're going to get you some additional material, and yet it talks about the difference between functionary versus being a fiduciary. So, you know, as we zoom in on this, looking at the difference here, a functionary is low level, fiduciary is high level, a functionary is low relationship, fiduciary is high relationship. Functionary assumes little responsibility versus high responsibility, low skill versus master skill, records information versus perceives information, responds to data versus anticipates, processes versus interprets, narrow picture viewpoint versus big picture. I mean, what are some of the ones that stand out to you versus functionary versus fiduciary? Because I can go all day on this. This is a strong topic. As you reflect on this, how are we showing up? What are our opportunities?
Irreplaceable.
Oh, that's good, right? A fiduciary is irreplaceable. Is that what you meant, Judy?
Yes. Yeah,
Awesome.
number 17. And
Mhm.
also anticipating needs as opposed to just responding to them.
Yeah. How about that last one? Like, as a result of doing all of the great things, you got one that's highly paid versus one that's minimally paid.
Mhm.
Great point. Jen, were you going to say something?
I was gonna say,
No,
the thing,
not Jen.
the legal,
No, I mean, not Jaime. I was talking to Jen, man.
Well, yeah, I was going to talk first, and then I was going to talk after.
All right, let me go with Jen, and I'm gonna come to you, Jaime.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I like number 14, educates and guides versus the tells and sells.
Ooh, that's a good one. What does that mean to you?
That's usually what I try to market myself as, you know, like on my Facebook or when I'm talking to people. I guess it's more sincere, you know, when people realize that you're not trying to be a salesman or saleswoman, you know, you're trying to educate them and so that they can make the best decisions. And that's one of my go-tos. It's always been my favorite one.
Awesome. Thank you for that one. Well said. All right, Jaime, now coming to you. You just disappear on us? Where'd you go?
All right, here.
There he is.
It's the virtual background.
It's
All
a
right.
virtual. No, I was gonna say I think that legal responsibility goes with the guide part, the education and guide. Kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, so education and guides versus tells and sells. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
I think
And you said minimum legal responsibility versus maximum legal responsibility?
Yeah, maximum. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good.
I think the one I think the thing as I'm looking at both lists, the thing I noticed is the one functionary, they're kind of behind the curve or behind the ball, so to speak, and fiduciary, they're above, or they're anticipating that curve or anticipating the ball, so they're kind of one step ahead. They're on it.
So your point, James, how much preparation and mastery of your craft is involved in being a fiduciary?
100%. Because I mean, you have to be a master of craft, and especially with your clients when it comes, especially that one receiving information. I really love that you're not just taking it in, but you're listening and you're perceiving what are their needs or whatever information they're telling you about what they're looking for, so that you can kind of anticipate, okay, this is where we need to go, or this is what we need to do to get you to your goal.
Yeah, so good. So good. Thank you for that. What are your thoughts? Anyone else out there about the preparation? And by the way, mastery isn't a destination. It's not when you're a master that you can call yourself that. Mastery is a journey, right? Continuously staying in curiosity and working on yourself, so that way you can one day call yourself a master. So mastery of your craft and preparation. When you hear me say that, what comes to mind around real estate and being a fiduciary? What comes to mind?
Well, for me, I think about it's ever changing. I mean, just even what you can save your clients with knowledge of propositions and tax ramifications. So you have to stay at the top of your game all the time. I mean, besides growing with technology and things like that, as the market has changed, you have to add value in a way that is encompassing the relationship, and then also looking out for things that you know would be of their need that they wouldn't even know to ask you for. So again, come with service with real-time value.
Yeah, I like that. Real-time value, right? Because the market continues to change. By the way, once you get your listing presentation dialed in, your buyer presentation dialed in, is it ever done? Is it ever finished?
No, you should be revising that at least 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah, right. I mean, I would say look at what's happening in your market quarterly. Right, check that out. Check it out quarterly and see how things are going.
And exactly, if the market shifts from especially like a buyer's or a seller's market, the kind of structure of just, what to expect is going to change, or days on market. Like, I mean, that information could drastically be updated due to the shifts in the marketplace.
Yeah, I have 100%. And when we're talking about this, perspective or these side of things here, considering what's possible when you dial in a great presentation, buyer or seller, what does that do for you around objections? Like any objections that you might have received in the past prior to updating your presentation? What do you notice? What should you notice when you have a dialed in buyer presentation and seller presentation?
Well, I would think that if you know what the objections are, they're the objections of the marketplace. They're not just of your buyer or seller. They're not isolated to just them usually, although they may have specific ones. So by already addressing it, it's like saying, I'm already in front of you. Now you're the guide. You're not the, oh, well, wait, we could figure it out. It's like, nope, I'm already prepared for that. And here's how we're going to resolve it. So you kind of can have your actions for those objections already in line.
That's so good. Yeah, absolutely. So when you have a strong presentation, and then, again, I just put the student manual in there for those of you who just joined us. If you have a strong presentation will handle any objections ahead of time, right? And by the way, and want to go into the point that, Sandy just talked about is updating your presentation at least quarterly, because once you do that, like you'll find that objections will pop up. There's nothing wrong with you adding the objections that you usually face. Maybe it's a particular market. Maybe it's around discounting. Maybe it's about discounting commissions. Maybe it's about staging. Maybe it's about, virtual selling. Maybe it's about COVID. Whatever it is, you can add that into your seller listing presentation. And so that way you never really have to, oh yeah, by the way, yes. And you never are surprised again, right? You handle it up front and it's no longer an objection. And you have one less obstacle to jump over to take that listing. All right, so that's what it's an evolving document. All right, so when we continue to roll here and get into it, and so I love this next quote here on page 77. My clients will only work with me, only I can deliver quality service. All right, so that's the myth, right? Now, the truth around that is your clients aren't loyal to you. They are loyal to the standards that you represent, though. The millionaire real estate agent, right? That's where it comes from. So a standard is the yardstick of your performance, and like a yardstick is a measure of how well you're performing. So what is that standard? What are you showing as a standard? This is on your page 77. All right? What do you expect for the standard to be? By the way, is it, hey, when you call me, I return calls within an hour. I return calls within, 24 hours. Whatever that is, what is your, say, standard and or expectation of how you service your people? And do you have one? By the way, I mean, one of the biggest things is the responsiveness, right, to agents. What sellers want and what clients want the most is an agent that's just going to get back. And so if you built that into a presentation, if you built that into some of your standards, could you be a step ahead of the competition because you have highlighted to sellers saying, hey, I've returned phone calls and I am highly responsive for the people that I work with. Just a thought there. Real quick, I kind of skipped over it, and yeah, just to touch base on page 76 at the bottom there, what sellers want the most. All right, they want you to market the property, no brainer, sell within a specific time frame, price the home competitively, and then find a buyer for the home. By the way, you can add another one. There is, don't get in the way of the negotiations. Right? Don't get in the way. Don't let your ego get in the way of the negotiations. For those of you who've been buyer heavy out there and you're talking to a lot of seller listing. By the way, I had one of our very own agents called me the other day, yesterday, and she was pissed, right? And here's what she said. She said, hey, Brian, she got things sorted out. However, the listing agent said, hey, I want you to put all of your contracts, agreements, whatever, in one PDF. I don't want 9 PDFs. I'm like, okay, well, understandable. So what happened? She said, well, because, I was on a time crunch and I couldn't get everything all in one, I sent out 2 or 3 PDFs. The listing agent said, what are you, stupid? Right? What are you, like, I can't figure out how you can't get this. So, speaking of that, right? You're talking leading with ego, whatever she was on that day, and whatever she was like, that's not how you lead, and that's not how you build relationships long term. So I told her, the agent, I said, hey, send me that agent's information. Let's look her up, and let's see where she's at in business, as well as maybe shout her out in our stakeholders meeting tomorrow. Hey, everybody send this agent a text today, right? You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us, right? However, point is, that's what goes around comes around, and you don't treat other agents like that. So just sharing, once you're on the right side of a listing, what you set up in terms of standard and approach and how you make other agents feel will certainly show up again. Very dope. Were you gonna say something on that?
Be nice.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's that kind of market at times. So communication standards. So we just kind of highlighted that. That's at your bottom of page 77. And so communication standards. And so we're not gonna get into the activity right now, and yet what standards what are your service standards, right? And how are you accountable to them? By the way, do you have it? I kind of mismentioned, do you have it on your marketing? Do you have it in your presentations? Hey, I respond to calls within XYZ amount of time, whatever it is. And so as you see there at the bottom of page 77, communication is the factor that customers will be quick to judge. They seldom feel they get too much communication. Let's say that again. They seldom feel they get too much communication. So you can't over communicate, right? In fact, one of the most common complaints, and I said this earlier, is that they are not getting enough communication. Proper and timely communication allows you to do the following. List them out. Provide strong foundation for a sustainable relationship. Set and manage expectations proactively throughout the transaction. Create peace of mind for your clients, and demonstrate your professionalism and enhance your credibility. Okay.
I would like to talk about creating peace for your customers.
Bring it.
Peace of mind. In this anxiety world of, people putting in so much more money for the properties that they are buying.
Yep.
You can't comfort them enough reassure them enough about the process and everything that's working, about the comps, that, you know, their house is going to continue to, you know, hopefully gain value. But that is so important, because once the anxiety level starts to go up in your buyers, stress can kill the whole deal. So, and all of that is the, you know, reassurance and constant communication of the process. That it's all, everything's gonna be A-okay.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
then,
You can't overcommunicate enough. Somebody gonna say something?
Oh, no, I was just saying, thanks, Mary Jo. I said, that's so true. Especially I have, like, that's been my issue with some of my buyers. Well, especially I have buyers that have been out of state. So I'm trying to deal with time differences and just trying to assure them, you know, we'll find something. And sometimes I have kids screaming in the background.
yes.
Because they have 3 little kids. They have a baby, and I think their oldest is 3. So sometimes we'll be talking, and we're trying to discuss an offer, or I'm trying to explain, you know, we didn't get it, and this is why we didn't get it. In the background, I hear like they're screaming, little child. So
That's so hard. Yeah.
yeah,
Just
You
to,
know, so I love that. Appreciate that. And so over communicating is everything. It's necessary today, and especially in this market. So you make you know, phenomenal point, Mary Jo, about that. And by the way, also the standard that you set, does it just stop at us, or is it also with our vendors and affiliates and other team members?
Good
Right.
point.
When's the last?
Yes.
Yeah. So when's the last time we actually checked in and held our own personal vendors accountable to how we need them to service our people? Whether it be lenders, whether it be home inspectors, whether it be, by the way, anybody ever have a home inspector blow up the transaction because they didn't talk a certain way or didn't have the right hand holding, if you will? You know, whatever it is, and obviously you're not saying cover up anything. That's not what I'm saying. There's a way that you can have conversation with buyers to put them at ease. Because a buyer is going to come in, they're going to do whatever, paint, carpet, flooring, landscaping, and then you add in plumbing, and then you add in electrical, and then you add in roof, and then you add in. So like a lot of buyers feel like they have to do all of that at once versus actually, you know, getting in there and being able to, you know, create those projects and do those projects over time. So, you know, just consider that and think about that as we continue to set this team service, right? Who do you have on your team? Has anybody, and just open dialogue here, has anybody ever lost a deal because of an extension of their team, particularly around home inspectors, lenders?
Lenders, yes.
Lenders. Yes.
I had a really bad experience with an inspector.
So, you know, tell me, I mean, what was some of the nuggets? If we're all smarter together than we are apart, what would you share, the 2 or 3 or 4 of you, in a quick little snippet? What was your key takeaway from learning about lenders and home inspectors? So Jen, what was your key takeaway from that experience with that home inspector?
Really, I guess just to do my research more on who I'm using, because this inspector was an area that I've never worked in before. So I kind of just found him, and I went based off just reviews, but I could have looked into it a little bit more. I don't know. The communication was bad. There was a freak accident that happened. So there was a couple things that happened, but you know, at the end of the day, the inspector refused to take any of the responsibility for what happened at the house. There was some damages, and that's a tough one, because I just, the only thing I think I could have done differently was just to look into more of who I was using. But he had good reviews, so I don't know.
So maybe it's at that freak accident. Maybe what you learned is never use that guy again.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because the way he handled it was just completely unprofessional, and we did almost lose the deal because of it. And me and the listing agent actually had to come together and figure out how we were going to fix the situation. So yeah, I immediately took him off of my contacts and not using him again.
By the way, you touch on something important there. Another service or a great team member, a part of this is the other agent. if you have another great agent on the other side of the deal, it'll help so much. And by
Right.
the way, that's what a lot of listing agents ask of their buyer's agents, is to know that that they're going to be able to close the deal. Like Mercedes, you had a scenario recently on a transaction that you just put together. You want to tell us about that?
Which
Um,
one?
well, the one about basically the listing agent that accepted your offer on, I think it was maybe Shannon or whomever. She you had a good conversation with her, and
Oh, yeah. So, I called her and, listing agents at this moment, I've been on both sides, so I get both sides of the transaction. And I told her, look, I will get this closed. I probed and asked so many questions, and she was like, oh, I don't want to talk. I don't want to this. She called me a persistent, nice bully in the sense. However, my client's offer was accepted because she said she felt comfortable and confident on just the conversation that her and I had. And then after they accepted my client's offer, we talked for another 30 minutes, just based on how are we going to operate together as a whole, because that's the key, especially in this market, to collectively get to the end result, which making, both clients happy. And so it's really important to build that relationship up front with listing agents. I don't care if the MLS says don't call, I'm calling, period. If the
yeah,
MLS says I only text, don't call, or don't ask me about, do you know how many times I've been told no, don't ask me about price, don't ask me about conditions, and yet I persistently continue to ask in my nice, as they say, nice bully way, and get the answers that I need. And that's how you continue to move forward in this business, and relationships definitely matter.
people want a strong agent, and there's been a lot of times that Mercedes and I have laughed, being of a transaction she was working on, or transactions that she's worked on, whether it be the listing side or the buyer side. So as a listing agent, I mean, how many times have we seen where there'll be an initial offer submitted and then a counter submitted back with no call, no questions, no response, none of that. And yet, had they just called to just check in on the counter, could they have gotten more information out of you that would have helped them put the deal together for their clients?
Right. So another listing, the one I believe he's talking about was in Lake Elsinore. I know what's out there, and I know how to write a counter to get, things done. And it was a tight counter. I already knew it was going to spook some agents. However, a strong agent like myself, I would have picked up the phone and went through the whole counter. What is it that you mean by this? What is it that you mean by that? How can we collectively work? Some of these agents just went ghost. Like, as soon as they got the counter, just backed out, scared. And you have to think about it. Is that the agent that you want to be for your client? Too scared to pick up a phone and just, hey, this counter spooked me. What can I do? What can I do to get my client in this house? Bring it on. So those things are important. Communication is key. Not being scared to ask questions is key. And yes, the nice bully, hashtag nice bully.
Speaking on the questions part of it and back to the home inspections, it's
Yep.
so critically important to be at the inspections for your buyers, with your sellers, especially if you're the listing agent as well. And then if you don't know a lot about home repairs, what's really great is to have one of your handymen with you who can, just say, that's no problem. I can get that done. No worries. This isn't a big deal. It's, because they can have insight to those repairs. I have a lot of, experience with that. So I'm able to talk those repairs down. But when you're with the inspector and he starts pointing things out, it's you as the agent that'll help with that peace of mind to question him about the severity of what he's seeing.
Yeah.
I agree, Mary Jo. My inspector actually has a handyman business in conjunction. So he's key, because he'll walk through a house and tell them, nah, that's not a big deal. That's not a big deal. You can do that in 5 years. You can do that in 7 years. and I don't get any complaints about him because like you said, it gives them that peace of mind while they're at the property going through things and he's pointing stuff out. It's important.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and third-party validation. So to that point, the tighter the market, well, from what I'm hearing, what you ladies have said is that you've got to have your the right people in the right position ready to go. And so being at the home inspection, being able to talk to the buyers and see what they're sensing in regards to, what kind of repairs are making them uptight. So every deal counts, every opportunity, and you worked your butt off to get them in escrow. Let's keep them there, right? Let's get them to the closing line.
Right.
So great point. Did anybody else want to share a little bit about a lender, right? Lender feedback or lender takeaways. What was the key part of having a great lender? Samantha.
Oh, yeah, I actually had to drop a couple of lenders that I was working with last year just simply because they didn't return phone calls or emails to both buyers that I had sent them and to me when I was looking for, just a quick update.
Mm-hmm.
And, it made me feel like they didn't value the business I was sending them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the lender business. Lenders get I want to say 90% of their business in most cases from agents. So we would think that the white glove service it would be extended out to agents as well as their clients, right? So they have two clients. They've got agents and client borrowers. So that's a great point. And by the way, having with the next lenders that you decide to use or partner with or whomever you have in place, could you potentially set the conversation up ahead of time, just saying, here's how I work, here's how I prefer to work. Just saying. All right, so let's keep moving on. So we have on our page 80, problem resolution. We've kind of talked about this, and yet in an indirect manner. This is a great little chart here for us to dialogue about what we're talking about here, bringing solutions to our people. So number one, so even a problem solving guideline. So focus on facts, not emotions. Woo, that's a big one.
That's huge.
Stop right there. Focus on facts, not emotions, right? Issues, not personalities. Woo, that is heavy. There's this especially working with buyers and or sellers, right? It can get emotional. This transaction, especially when somebody's selling their primary residence, it can get emotional. So hear me, right? Hear us when I say, right, there's this bold law. Logic makes you think, emotions make you act. Now, the emotion, when you find that the client is a highly emotional in a transaction, buyer or seller, you've got to take them back to logic. That bold law goes either way. Logic makes you think, emotion makes you act. Sometimes you got to get people to get back to thinking logically so that way they can let go of whatever they're holding on to. Right? It's oftentimes not always just about the money. It's the principle. Nobody ever wants to be out negotiated. Right? Mm-hmm. Nobody ever wants to feel like they're getting one over on them. And yet it's got to be a win-win. So Cynthia, how you doing?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. With that, I just wanted to add, but I think it's also important to validate their emotions.
Yeah.
Because I think that also shows that you're hearing where they're at and you're hearing their concerns. Yes. But I think at the same time, adding the facts to it. So it's like, yes, I understand you're upset about this or you're stressed or unsure. However, these are some things that we can do, or this is how we can help the situation. I mean, whatever it is that's going through at that time.
Yeah, great point.
Very good point.
Absolutely. Validate that emotion, right? Make sure that they feel heard. I love that. Apologize for any error or validate the concerns. So that's a great point. So you touched on that. Number two, own your statements personally, right? I, not we or they. Now, if you're in the individual, if you do have a team, the we is also good too, right? Meaning bringing your team members like, hey, we can do better, et cetera. Because if you have a personal team, and you may have you have that ability to have other multiple people in the conversation. Yet if it's individual, right, your deal personally, yeah, own your statements, right? Um, Paraphrase a concern to be sure you have it right. From what I'm hearing you saying is one thing that you'll always find about me, and I got kind of ingrained early. Sometimes it can be annoying, is to other people. Yet it could be that more around repeating the statement. So from what I'm hearing you say is, and just to make sure I have it correct, and always going back and repeating the statement because that's going to make sure that you're hitting the actual challenge that they might be having, and you're not addressing the wrong thing. So always be repeating that statement. All right, great. And then get into the root of the cause, get into why, right? Ask them multiple times, why, right? Get into that root. This discuss a variety of possible solutions, speak to the root of the cause, get deep. Using the whys will help you get there. And then once you have an agreement, move fast to solve. Build any useful lesson into the business for the future as well, right? Anything key takeaway. So one key takeaway, and it's not in here that I'll touch on is a great trainer, Monica Reynolds, who's also the vice president of MAPS coaching. She also teaches a course called the Perfect Real Estate Assistant. And what she talks about is that every time that you talk to the seller, talk to a client, it's basically verbal and then text and then verbal, right? Meaning, hey, if we have a conversation about negotiations, let's put it in writing. Hey, recap. So just to recap that you and I spoke about this, put that in writing, and then call just to make sure, hey, talk to you about, we just talked, sent that in writing, just want to make sure you got it. Right. So it's always a call, email, call, right? Or if it's an email, right? So it's email, call, and then right, email again. So you just always want to have those overlaying areas. Now, why might that be important? Why might we want to follow that type of guideline? You won't know why to do that until you've gotten burned once or twice.
Right.
So why is that critical?
Legally, just to protect yourself.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Clarification and understanding.
Yes.
Confirmation. Yeah.
Absolutely. So make that a standard practice. As soon as you hang up on the phone verbally with the client, get it in writing. Hey, just to recap, here are the following steps. Here's what we're going to do next. Yada, yada, yada.
Verify too, if they were really listening too.
That too.
I know that's happened a lot of times. People say, don't you remember I said this to you? No, I don't remember, because it sounds funny, but at that particular time, they weren't really listening.
So many times. Yeah.
Or they didn't clearly hear what you said.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, I don't make sense. Sometimes it's kind of like the husband-wife thing. Remember I told you this? I don't remember. I don't remember that.
That's a great point, Jaime, in that husband and wife, or you're just talking to one buyer or one of the buyers or one of the clients. And so the email confirms it to all parties, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, he was also going. Huge. He was also going with, hey, wife, remember when we talked about this a year ago? And right. So what I got from that is, right, have the conversation, put it in writing with your spouse, and so don't forget to, right, call your spouse, email them, confirm, and say, right. So great aha there, right? I'm listening, Jaime. Thank you for that.
The other thing too is when you deal with people are all different. Yep. Some people are more talkers and some are more listeners.
Yep.
So how they hear, and it's all different. It's so different. We're all so different.
Great point. So as we continue to move on, so let's talk marketing plan, right? And so where do I go? Yeah, marketing plan. So this is a great conversation when we're getting into this, because right, marketing, and let's get into the big picture. So we're on page 81 on this, and so you're marketing your brand, right, and you're marketing your listing. So highly productive listing agents creatively do both at the same time, marketing their brand as well as the listing. So it's one fundamental reason why listings are so powerful, because like I said earlier, your names are on the sign, right? So you not only do you have your brand on the sign, you have your name on the sign, and that sign generates additional business. So if you focus on marketing your seller listings, the buyers will come. That's the like one rule of the MREA, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, is that if you, for every property marketed seller listing, you should be able to get one closed buyer from that transaction. All right, for every property, well marketed property listing that you have, you should be able to get at least one buyer closing. And we've seen it. We've seen it around, whether my personal coaching clients or just overall, just on a massive level, is that for every seller listing that you take, you should be able to get one closed buyer. Now, it's easier to do today. Why is it easier to do today versus maybe 2 decades ago? Get one closed buyer for every seller listing that you take, that you market well. Why is it easier to get that one buyer now?
Your marketing reaches more people.
How come?
Social media.
That's one, absolutely. Social media, and then you add what KW is doing with Command, right? Lead Excel, Command campaigns, and generating very low costing leads. And so there's no excuse. The only issue is most agents don't slow down enough or have systems in place enough to be able to have procedures for seller listings. So here's what I mean. You take a listing on Tuesday, and then you rush to get the pictures and photography up and put it on the market by Friday, right? Or even not even Friday, maybe Saturday. And so yet there's a great agent that I know of, if that saying, if you basically what they've done is if you list with them prior to a Wednesday, like Wednesday being the cutoff date, you could probably get your property on the market by that Friday, Saturday. Now, if you don't, and if you list on the Thursday, then you're going around the following week to come and back and list on that Wednesday, Thursday. The reason being is because, how often do we throw a listing up on the market and we throw our whole schedules off and our whole weeks off because we've got to rearrange everything to get photography scheduled, rearrange everything to get signs out, lock boxes on, properties into the MLS. Your whole world doesn't have to stop, right, to service a listing. So the challenge is, or the question is, when should we be having that dialogue about our approach to how we market their property and when properties go on the MLS, et cetera? When should we be having that conversation?
Listing appointment?
At the listing appointment, absolutely. So here's how it's going to go. Here's when the property is going to go on the market. Now you may push back and say, well, some sellers want to get on the market ASAP and they need to sell ASAP. Okay, I get that, right? Some cases, notice defaults, et cetera, they got to get on the market ASAP. Most cases though, 90 to 95%, a seller can wait a week before getting on the market to make sure that you give yourself ample room to be able to get the property marketed, photography scheduled, so that way you don't have to compress your schedule to meet their needs. Does that make sense? What are you hearing me say on that?
You need to take into consideration the timing of when you are going to be putting it on the market. All that takes time. And so make sure that you're communicating with your client, exactly, listen to them and then find out exactly how much in a hurry they are. And if they're not in that much of a hurry, take the time that you need to do it right so that so there's a rhythm to your madness. It's not just all chaotic.
Yeah, well said. Well said. It doesn't have to be chaotic. It doesn't have to be. We can set that up ourselves. So, with that being said, by the way, now in this market, it might be a little bit more challenging to do, right? Because when we look at, there's a great question here at the bottom of 81, to list it or to market it. Really, in this market, all we have to do is list it and it sells. And yet, in a buyer's market, by the way, I jumped in the industry in 2010 when days on market on average was about 300 to 400 days, right? So we had a lot of short sales, we had a lot of foreclosures, and literally every month a property was on the market, the prices were actually falling about 1% a month, meaning over the year, for about 2 years, prices were dropping about 12%. So like I worked with a lot of investors at that time. And so those investors, they would literally say, hey, well, I have to price in depreciation, not appreciation, depreciation. So that's a cost to their bottom line. They had to put that number in because if they bought it today, it was going to be worth less in like 90 days. So my point is, in that market, you had to market properties. You had to stage, you had to, be creative about who you were sending it out to, get the word out, all of the above. Today, before you put the property on the MLS, you put it on coming soon, before you put the sign up, it's sold. Right? So that's such a key question, to list or to market. We should always be marketing. And here's what we like. So that's do you have a just listed or just sold campaign? Meaning every single time that you take a seller listing, what is your procedure for getting the word out about it? Even ahead of time, to your database, to your social media, to the neighbors in the area, whether it be calls, postcards, emails. Like, what are you doing to get the word out, to leverage each and every seller listing that you have? Right? What is that procedure? Are you slowing down enough to execute that? Just like the process that we just mentioned. Or do we feel like we have to just get it on the market and let it fly? Thoughts?
I think you can get a lot more leverage by letting people know that you just got a listing. Not just for the purpose of getting that particular property sold, but for the purpose of letting the community, people that know you, know that you're busy, that you're active, that you're working, that you're experienced. There's a lot that goes with it, getting that information out, other than just, the goal is obviously to service your client, but it also allows you to get a lot of other good benefits out of it.
Yeah, so good, so good. Thank you for that, Laura. So on your page 82, talking about marketing plans for listing, look at all the different things that you can do. And by the way, I'll post it in the chat box again, just in case we don't have it, the manual. I'm just gonna post it again. So give me a second, 1 minute. All right, so you got that, Samantha, for those of you who just joined us. Now, yeah, look at this though, around your page 82. So look at all the different things, 14 steps. Now, Michael Lewis does a great job of highlighting your steps of your marketing plan that you can talk to sellers about. And do me a favor though, customize it to you. Because if you list something that you don't do, or you leave something in there that you don't do, and the seller asks you about it, and because you didn't do it, how bad do you look then? Like, for instance, number 11, include house and company sponsored tours and caravans. Nobody's doing that anymore, right? They're not doing that right now anyway. So that might not be something in there that you should keep in there. Okay, that's one. That's number 11, right? Create open house program. Right now in this market, we're not doing that. So it goes back to the point of Sandy, what Sandy said earlier when we're talking about how often we update our listing presentations. There's two things right there that shouldn't be in our listing presentations because we can't do them. Right, we can't do them right now anyway, according to California. Right? That's another thing. So just consider that. So I want you to go through on pages 1 through 14. I want you to list out, do a check mark, or just go in them through mentally and see, what do I do and what don't I do? All right, just look at that on page 82 at the bottom there. What do I do and what don't I do? And throw it in the chat box if you've got some opportunity. Let us know if you've got some work to do on adding those things. Like for instance, feel free to throw it in the chat box. What should you be doing more of that you're not doing right now in according to your marketing plan for your listings? Feel free to just put one in there. What is the one that you're going to add in this week, at least into your presentation? What is the one on your page 82, bottom of 82, out of the 14-step marketing plan that you don't do that you intend to do more of? Add in there for your next seller listings. What is it? Pricing for the market. I love that. Post on social media. That's a good one. Thank you for that, Mario. What else? What else? There's a lot of other, there's at least 12 other ideas on there. We got 2. What else? What else? What else? What else? Page 82. Target market to investors and active buyers. That's good. I like that. Target market to investors and buyers in your database. That's a good. Now you're cross marketing. That's a good point, Judy. What else? What else? Let's keep the engagement going, folks. Nobody likes to talk to themselves. Nobody likes to talk to themselves. One more. Let me get one more. Move on. It's okay. I'll wait. Feel free to unmute yourself if you don't want to take the time to type it. I know some of us might be mobile. What else?
I want to say that even though earlier you had said that, you know, if you just list it right now, it will sell, like before you had to market it more, but now if you just list it, it will sell, which is true. But after going with my buyers to many, you know, showings recently, more than I would like to admit, one thing I can tell is the agents that really are professional are there, like showing their grit with making sure things are scheduled, making sure that people who did not turn in peds are not walking in, you know, so you still can offer the value, because what seller wants to feel like you didn't do much to sell it, and they are selling quickly. So there is that risk that, you know, your reputation's still attached to this transaction. Yeah. And when you sell it quickly, they still want to see your effort. So maybe you need to increase you know, organization and sanitary procedures in COVID times of quick showings, right? I mean, there just has to be more value add somewhere else, even if you take it away from the marketing that's not as necessary right now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And because of all the effort necessary these days to sell property due to the PED forms and screenings and all of those things, they still have to happen. That's a really good point. So now let's get into marketing budgets, right? And so managing a marketing budget, hold your marketing dollars accountable, right? Top listing agents test and track effectiveness of each method, then commit to the message and method that are the most effective and worth the time and money spent. I want you to listen to that. It's about the message and the method. So what messaging are you putting out right now around your seller listing, and particularly about sellers overall? I'm going to take a step back and say, just instead of focusing on seller listings, marketing those, because you can market that pretty systematically. And yet, if you were to want to generate more sellers, what is it that you've got to do? Number one, I would ask you to check your mindset. Check your mindset around your clarity over the seller listing process, right? What do you believe to be true about sellers and taking seller listings? Do you believe that you have the skill set necessary? Do you believe that you have the confidence necessary? Because if you have the skill set, the confidence will show. So how are we doing at building the skill set? and you're in step one. We're having a dialogue now, so congratulations, right? Step two is, so level two is, what is your message? So most agents, and I did this in a poll, and I told this to Mary Jo earlier, and yet I did this in a group of 100 agents because I do bolds virtually. I'm doing a bold right now in Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, virtually as a bold coach. And I asked the group, it was about 100 agents. I said, and I want to say they did something nuts. Like, I could probably tell you right now how many conversations they had. So there's a bold that I had, let me see. So the amount of conversations they had, contacts made, I want to say it was like over the last few weeks, like 10,000 conversations made, right? So like they've talked to 10,000 people, these 100 agents. And I said, okay, well, out of curiosity, those 10,000 conversations, how many of you would say that you talk to more sellers than buyers? 70% of that 100 agents or so said they talk to more buyers than sellers. Now, everybody would agree that we could use more sellers, and yet just by nature, just by sheer, right, by default, we're talking to more buyers than sellers just because the buyers show up. And they're probably easier to talk to because you're more comfortable with that conversation. So the question is, what is our messaging out there? What are we putting out? And are we specifically dialoguing, putting messaging out about sellers and attracting seller listings? So are we attracting sellers or are we attracting buyers? And I can tell you, in a room of pretty good, strong agents, most of them didn't even realize they were talking to more buyers on a weekly basis versus sellers. And I've said this before, you're unable to impact your seller listing inventory personally until you start talking to a disproportionate amount of sellers on a regular basis. What are you hearing me say?
You'll become what you do.
That's a good one. I like that. You'll become what you do. Tell me more.
Well, I mean, wherever you put your time, that's kind of what you're going to create. So, and I mean, this is definitely screaming in my ear right now because I would rather, for my lifestyle, my schedule, work with listing. I mean, obviously who wouldn't, right? So, but buyers are just surrounding me, and then I give them my time, and sometimes more time than I should, and they're swallowing up any time I have to lead generate for listings.
Yep.
So I'm definitely off balance right now.
That is, and that's a great awareness, by the way. That's so pivotal because that's going to be, and until we get into awareness about it, nothing is going to change. So I appreciate you sharing this. And so, and by the way, dealing with the uncomfort of figuring out how to jump on seller opportunities, seller listings, versus saying, you know what, by default, like you mentioned, Sandy, buyers are surrounding all of us, right? It's not just you, it's everybody, and it's across the whole country because low rates and COVID, has triggered something in people to say, I got to own versus rent, whatever it is. And so until until we raise the bar on what we find to be an acceptable buyer in this market, we're going to work with just anybody. Until we raise the bar, until what we find as an acceptable buyer, because not every buyer is MLS ready. There's two types of buyers in this marketplace. I might have said it last week or 2 weeks ago. You have a buyer that's MLS ready, or probably more conventional or cash. And then you've got buyers who aren't MLS ready in this market anyway, FHA and VA, unfortunately. So with that, what is it that we can do to help them? Now, are we going to just turn our backs on those FHA ready buyers? Probably not. I don't think so. And yet, could you find a home for those people if you thought and worked strategically enough off market? There's agents doing it all the time.
Well, and the benefit is too, if you're trying to like work off market to find your buyer something, hey, that home likely more than not, it's not going to work specifically for your buyer, but you're still going to be able to take care of a buyer for someone. I mean,
yep. And by happenstance, you're talking to more sellers.
Right.
You're building your seller skill set. You're building the seller dialogue. You're building the mindset to work with seller. It's a muscle, and you're going to continue to attract more. So going right back to that. So make sure that your budgeting is solid. And obviously, fortunately, we've been grateful. We've been blessed enough that we don't have to spend a whole ton to sell seller listings today. And yet going back to the market that we came from prior to this one, 10 years ago, when we had, 100 days, I mean, literally the average days on market was 100 days. In some cases, you couldn't give properties away, or you literally had to give properties away to get them sold. Cut the price and stage it really well with video, with photography, all of the above, right? There's agents right now that have, some of us who've been in the industry long enough remember those days where you literally had to stage a property, or you had to price it very aggressively just to get showings. So with that being said, all right, that's given us grace around what we spend on seller listings. And yet have that in your back pocket, that maybe in a few months or about a year or so, who knows what happens with with the economy and all the above. There's a lot of greater things at play here, and yet be ready to have a marketing budget that you may need to stage. The very minimum, I would say, and I would foresee, is virtual staging would be the very minimum that you do to sell seller listings. Just be aware, in about a year and a half, you'll be like, hey, Brian, remember that one moment that you said being ready, right? If you stay ready, you never have to get ready. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so as we continue to go there, right, talking about budget. Any questions about marketing budgets, by the way? Any other questions other than photography, videography, 3D Matterport, all the above? By the way, I don't think I've shared it yet. However, for the next 30 days, anybody who has a seller listing, the office is going to cover that photography and videography for you. Anybody who has a seller listing in the next 90 days, the office is going to cover the photography and videography for you. Just the shoot, right? They're going to cover the shoot. So whoever has a seller listing that's on the fence here coming up soon, just be aware, because we want to make sure that we are bringing the most professional look and feel to our listings. That's what we're offering. Okay. So
Brian,
yes.
What would you recommend? Like, obviously your budget might change as your, pipeline fills up or your funnel fills up. So
Yep.
New agent or newer agent, what would you suggest? What percentage of transactions closed would you suggest? I mean, obviously everybody has to use that kick up money to get started, but
Yep.
once you have transactions rolling in, what percentage of your closed transactions would you allocate back to marketing?
Great question. So I would say lead generation as a whole, it's 10%. Right now, 10%. Now there's going to be a portion in that 10% that you would spend on particularly your seller listings. So if you're, you do $100,000 in gross commission income for the year, that's $10,000. Now that grows as you do more production. So in order for you to earn, at an average price point, I could do some very fast math here for you. At a $500,000 average price point, at 2.5% commission, you're looking at, that's 12.5. So you're looking at about 8 transactions. So 8 transactions at an average price point of 500,000 at 2.5% will get you $100,000. Now, question is, if you did, or even if you said all of those 8 transactions were all seller listings, and you spent, call it, $500 for your complete marketing, photography, videography, all the above, you would still be only spending what, $3,200?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, about $4,000, right? Yeah, it'd be about $4,000. So then you have another $6,000. That's just to service your listing. So, you'd be saying anywhere between, 2 to 4% of your 10% marketing budget or lead generation budget, 2 to 4% specifically for marketing your seller listings. Because if you're servicing 16 listings a year, that's a marketing budget for your seller listings of $8,000 a year. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, great question.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm thinking of targeting my area, my neighborhood here in Chino, a specific area. And I'm thinking of doing direct mailing. And just, letting know I'm your neighbor, I'm your realtor kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And then, is that something, I mean, and I'm thinking just for purpose of name recognition and just putting my name and face out there. And then following that up with maybe another direct mailing, maybe twice a year, do something for them. I don't know. Is that something that is, I mean, for the purpose of targeting, and these are all homeowners, most people own their home, very few rentals. I know the turnover, people sell their houses about what now, every 8 years? Is that the new step?
Yeah, it depends on the area. Like in Orange County, it's like every 17, 18 years right now. With the way the market is turned, it's like every 25 years. It's crazy.
Okay.
With how tight seller listings are. So to your question, a few thoughts. If you're gonna market it to an area, know the turnover rate. So how often homes are turning over. So if it's a farm of 1,000 homes and you have a turnover rate of say 8%, you're looking at, what is that, 80 homes sold in that area. That's decent. That's a decent turnaround rate, by the way. Anything less than 6, I would have a hard time looking at it. Unless by the way, the higher the price point typically in that neighborhood, the lower the turnover rate typically. So I would be very wary at 6 to 5, unless the price point made up for it, that it made sense, that you're like, okay, I'm doing less deals, however the volume makes up for it. Right. And so that's one thing that I would say. And then the other thing that I would say is in regards to getting some feedback. All right, so and feel free to unmute yourself afterwards. So in regards to that, so to your question around marketing, you got a couple different ideas. So once you've said, okay, I know I like this area because turnover is great, I'm going to jump in. The next part of the conversation is what's your medium, right? So we even talked about your medium. What's the method at which you're going to get into conversation with these people? So like Thomas Ryan, I loved his dialogue. It was very cost affordable, meaning he's dropping, right? So he's dropping door hangers every month. So if you even added, say if you're willing to, depending on what you're willing to do, if you're willing to walk, right, to walk out your farm and get out there and drop door hangers, that's a great way to go because it's very cost effective, very cost effective. The other side of it, if you don't have the time, then yeah, you could lean on postcards. However, it's a long-term game. So you're talking about farming. And so farming, most of the time, one touch won't just do. You want to do multiple touches, door hangers, and then the occasional mailer, right, or whatnot, or phone call, or whatever the case is. So I would really, really recommend is you make sure that whatever campaign you're going to start around farming, that you build it to last, that you're saying that you're going to give yourself a year to continue to do what it is that you're doing. So if that means mailing once a month for the year, then that means mailing once a month. Now, can you afford to keep that going? In this market with the low inventory, and we will snap back, we just don't know when. I don't recommend just solely mailing. You got to do something else in there. I really like the idea of just, if you're in that community and you're a neighbor, why not just walk the neighborhood and drop door hangers, or drop a card in postcard in the doorway, doing something of that nature, and going from there. I think that you can't go wrong in that way. Does that help? I muted you.
Yes, it's very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, lead with revenue. Red light, green light. And Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, right? Don't lead with revenue. Don't spend a whole lot. Do your best not to spend. The only way that you can make up for any of the other stuff is is you got an infinite war chest of cash. And then you're willing to just throw money every single month after a farm and go after it and getting it that way. It's just what I would share. All right. So by the way, if you had any questions around staging, there's a great chart on 86. So living, so if you were to say, okay, what are the best areas of a house to focus on in terms of staging? It'd be your living room first, kitchen second, master bed third, dining room fourth. All right, in that order. So living room, kitchen, dining room, and then, oh, no, I'm sorry, living room, kitchen, bedroom, and then dining room. All right, later on in the market, if you did have to stage for whatever reason, it was a bigger priced home, or days on market slow up considerably, you'd be looking at staging in that manner. So just want to touch base on that. There's a lot of great conversation about staging it too. 32% of realtors report that 1 to 5% increase in the sales price as a result of staging. 16% say 6 to 10% increase, and then 3% say 11 to 15% increase in price from staging. Now, this is back in 2015. All right, so now let's look at the cost of servicing and marketing listings that don't sell. And this kind of goes back to, and this is on page 88, this kind of goes back to the conversation is no matter what price that you set for a seller, until you get a price that's agreeable for both parties, win-win, there's no marketing that you could discuss that would set you up to overcome the cost of a bad price. Because if you look at it, even on the screen here, we've been sitting here for a while, and I trust you picked up on it, is that pricing. Pricing is the number one, first and foremost, best way to initially market something, anything, particularly a seller listing. As soon as a home goes up, what's the first thing somebody says? Price, right? How much is it? What's the specs? Is it valuable? And that's the number one focus for a marketing campaign that you could have, is setting the price up. So in a presentation, a listing presentation, that's why in the order of your presentation, it's right. You talk motivation, right? Where are they going to? Why are they getting there? All the above, right? Getting deep into motivation, having a very clear understanding of why they're moving. And then you go into, right, making sure you have all the details there. And then you go into the CMA, right? What are the numbers? And then you go into marketing. You never talk marketing before the CMA. All right. So if you want order of preference there, it's the dialogue first of the motivation, then you go into CMA, and then you go into marketing in that order. And then after that, it's what's the process? How do we set up the showings? What is it like? Do we need to be here? Right? It's those frequently asked questions that they typically have, sellers typically have. So just be aware of that. So there's a cost for marketing a property that never sells to your agent. So think about the time that you spent on it. So your dollar per hour. Think about your reputation, that cost, right? Think about your own time, that you spend going back as a result. And also any hard costs around creating marketing materials, photography, videography, any of that. There's a cost to that. Make sense? So so just keeping that in the price, in the thought of it there. So going deeper into pricing and understanding pricing as a process. Can I have somebody read page top of 89, pricing number 5, pricing, just those first 2 paragraphs there. Laura, are you going to do it?
I'll do it.
Perfect.
Pricing is a process. Learning to do it well also requires knowing pricing strategies based on the principles that drive markets. It also requires knowing pricing tactics, building and presenting a comparative market analysis, and the scripts that go with it. It is very important to grasp the following 6 critical strategies that set the stage for using pricing criteria effectively. These strategies are standards you need to bear in mind as you approach pricing any property.
format. Thank you for that. So be aware of that. Those are all, important things to mention. So make sure that you can price. And also know what you can and can't control, right? That's another point. And so, by the way, for your higher end deals or just deals for sellers that are not too sure about where they need to be pricing the property, consider an appraisal up front prior to putting the property on the market. Consider an appraisal. There's nothing wrong with that. So let's get into offer and negotiations, right? So, we've talked about servicing and marketing pretty well. So offers and negotiations, it's pretty straightforward. And yet we talked a little bit about it earlier. Don't let your ego or any ego get in the way of your ability to negotiate a great deal for your clients. So looking at this on your page, let me see here. What page is this? 96. This is a really good graphic. I like this a lot. So I'm gonna actually just share that screen because I know maybe some of us may not have it. However, let me see, new share. This is a really good moment of truth here. So whenever you have somebody like hung up on price and like, I don't know, I need a higher offer, this is really good to keep in mind. So your sellers are at a moment of truth. They have to accept, counter, or reject the offer or a offer. Top agents consult clients to accept a counter, not reject it. Help them assess the market and their position so that they decide what path to take on the negotiating crossroads. So then your expertise and negotiation ability, it's up to that to make the path as profitable for them as possible. So another way to encourage your clients about an offer is to explain the real cost and benefits of another month passing. So think about that. So what is the cost? I know it doesn't pertain so much in this market, and yet just think about it here in a moment, because there are certain cases when it shows up. All right, what is the cost of paying another mortgage combined with the amount that they are being asked to come down from their asking price? So if the asking price $230, they got an offer at $228, again, maybe not this market, difference being $2,000 plus whatever the monthly costs are. The real difference then is only $500. So again, not in this market, and yet we always want to prepare for the market that we're going into, right? And yet, have you ever had a scenario where you had a seller get an offer that maybe they didn't really expect, and now you've got to have a conversation with them about this is probably the best offer you're going to get. And so when you look at that chart here, asking that difference, again, asking price, whatever offer came in, if there's a difference for whatever reason, maybe they started too high, what's that monthly cost to them? And then what is the real difference? Also take into account any other, so not even just the monthly mortgage payment, also take into account what are the servicing costs, right? What are the holding costs, electrical, landscaping, right? Again, the bigger the home, especially with investment properties too, that's another thing too. So just thinking about that. So let me go back here. Any questions on any of that? Thoughts? Make sure
I think one thing, I recently had a buyer who, trying to convince them to see things differently with offering over asking. And I said, asking is the starting.
Yep.
It's not what they want for it. It's where they want the bidding to start, because that's the market we're in. Mm-hmm. Once they understood that, then I explained to them, in 3 months, how much more would this same square footage cost you? In 2 months, how much would this square footage cost you if we continue to appreciate where we are, which likely there's no indicators right now that that's slowing down. And they started to realize that by putting the offer in higher now, they could save money, because by the time they close escrow, a new set of closed homes are going to have recorded and so forth. Therefore, comps will be higher. And the next sellers are going to mark their houses that much higher. So I think that really painting that neutral picture before you, even start having offers, whether it's putting offers in, like educating your buyers. Right now, I had to send my buyers solds just so that they could see, oh, look, they were listed for this, but none of them closed for that. Mm-hmm. That really spoke to them. That really helped, set the tone. So setting the tone, whether it's working with buyers or sellers, is important.
Oh, I love that, Sandy. You make a really strong point there onto that note. is, and I did this in a group, a small group not too long ago, and yet to your point, this is a show me market. Again, sometimes you've got buyers out there who need to know. So there's two things. Some buyers they need to lose out once in a while, right? Lose out on the deal, so that way they know that you were serious when they were talking about hey, you've got to make an offer higher. The other part is you got to show them what's truly happening in the marketplace, and you talked about that. Because what's the true cost? If you feel like this is high today, think about what prices might be at the way things are accelerating. Think about what prices might be in, like you mentioned, 6 months. If you don't get this, and you don't buy in the next year, like there's a property that I was looking at last year, in Eastvale, right? They're 500,000 today, 600,000. 1 year, less than about a year later, 10 months or so. So, you're talking about 15 to 20% appreciation in one year. So, thinking about that for a buyer, what could we do to show them what's going on right now in the marketplace, right? So could you show the like you mentioned, Sandy, sold to list price ratios, right? What's sold in the past year and in the past few months in town. All right, so just consider that. So that's a great point.
With that, I just did a 30-day, because even going back more than 30 days is old information. And so I did 30 days in the zip code in the same range of square footage. And then I said, look at the percentage that it is selling over. So then they could kind of get an average of percentage. So if it's really nice, it's at the higher side. If it's not nice, it's at the lower side. But the rarity is something that doesn't close at asking price or higher. So they started to realize they have to ignore almost that price as I have to pay that. That's where I have to start.
Yeah, that is the start, like you mentioned. That is the start. And so bringing that data, by the way, nobody has more data than a realtor, right? I mean, use that data to your benefit. Are you talking to them, or are you showing them what the data says? That's a great point. Thank you for that, Sandy. So let's jump into contract to close. All right, what kind of contract to close systems can we use? By the way, anyone here ever find that you get going on a transaction and all of a sudden you're like, oh snap, I forgot to order the termite, or oh snap, I forgot to, anybody here, buyer side or seller side? Just me? Okay, I see how it is. I see how it is.
Well, I've only done one transaction, so I can't really.
I get it. I get it.
I have a really good escrow officer. She's on it for me all the time.
Yep. Yes, you do. You got a great escrow officer. Yeah, absolutely, which is helpful, right? So to your point, having the right people around us to help us with our support, right? Help us with keeping us on track. So what's your, going back to what's your team like? Do you have a great team, TCs, right? By the way, so I wanted to talk about real quick, your checklist. Do you have a transaction to close checklist personally about what you need to do personally to keep your transaction on track? And something that you could create, so to the point to where you give it to somebody else in your business and they can run it for you later on when you get to the point of growth, right? What would that have to look like? So has anybody ever dialed in their transaction to close checklist before? Anybody? Do you have it?
No. Glide, if you're using the Glide for transactions, there's a great calendar you can set up with your contingencies.
Okay.
And then you can export it to your Google Calendar, and you can also email that out. And then it when you log in, it kind of keeps you on track.
I like that. That's good. Yeah. That's good. So using Glide, so Glide has some systems there. That's good. What else? Anybody else using anything good? All right, so here's what so I'll show you a little sneak peek because I appreciate you being on here. So here's something that I developed a few years ago with my admin years ago. And we talked about, so basically what we did is we sat down and we said, how do we want the ideal transaction to look? And so we created an escrow timeline for buyers and sellers. And so what we did was, so here's some standard information. So what are the inspection and contingency dates? Who are we using for whatever scenarios? What times and whatnot are we working with them? So here's when we want to do client calls. Here are the preferred days for that. Weekly update, asking for referrals, having conversation with referrals. When do we want us to ask for referrals, right? Open escrow. Okay, so then here's the open escrow buyer timeline. So receive an email, execute contract. So literally on day 1 through day 3, like I can wake up and say, okay, what do I need to do today for this client? Check, 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 and know exactly where we need to be. So that's escrow to start. And then, it's for whatever reason, I think because it's a Google Doc, it's like separated right here. So disregard that. So day 4, right? Confirm appraisal was ordered on day 4, whatever, fast forward. Day 15, remind agent to remove inspection contingencies. Sandy asked a great question. Can you please share this? What's it worth to you? Right, post-close. We got a post-close system here. And then we have phone calls starting the day after closing. Here's what we're checking in, right? Calls. Seller, don't wait. There's more. There's a seller checklist. Here's everything that we do to get things set up prior to putting the property on the market. So listing on the MLS, right? Getting the marketing flyers created, open houses. This is what I'm talking about. We're talking about contract to close, systemization of your business. You can hand this out to your TC. You can hand this out to your admin and literally just follow the checklist. Who's supposed to be doing what and when, right? So just keeping everything on track. All right, so I trust that you see this as value. And my biggest pet peeve is giving stuff out that isn't used. So I'm gonna just go ahead and, here you go. It's in the Google Drive. Feel free to download and make yours. And so go for it. Feel free to test the link, make sure that it works. Close it out. We're done here. One time and one time only. So I trust this is valuable. All right, so this is that took probably about a few weeks to really get into dialed in, and probably about a few $1,000s in people hours. Mine including my admins to sit down and put that together. So just gave a few $1,000s in value away. So I trust we find that valuable. Cool. All right. So I trust that helps. Contract to close. So the point is, as you look at it, just notice that we're really working to every moment. And actually, let me go back. I want to go back to this because this is a big part of the transaction to close part, is that notice how often the client communication is, right? So here's what the client needs to do. Transaction disclosures completed and returned. Client call, same time day 1, client call day 2, client call day 3. This is for sellers, right? Client call day 5, day 7, right? So the first 7 days we're calling 7 times because we want to make sure that they know that we're in it for them, right? And we're setting the tone for how the transaction is going to go, right? And then we're also checking in with all these people, make sure escrow's on track, make sure the lender's on track. And so, by the way, when any one of us are in that moment of making our first hire, right, and building our business, we're doing enough business to where, right, we got to bring in leverage, we got to bring in other people to help us out. Follow this checklist to a T. Don't spill a drop, right? That kind of thing. And by the way, what we found is in command. Okay, so hold me accountable, right? I wouldn't tell you to do anything that we wouldn't do and my personal business isn't doing. So we're talking about dialing it in. So, personal team. And then, so this is, there's 2 opportunity pipelines, right? So I've got multiple, and some of you might have already seen this. However, this is just more of like my, dummy account. So this is not my real business, but point is, notice that there's a checklist in here about everything that we do. You can literally copy and paste in your opportunities in command and keep your transaction up to date with everything going on. So if look, let's see, day 1, look at that, client call, right? Day 2, client call. Day 3, right? So you notice, again, literally it's copy and paste. And how I did that, edit my stages, up in the upper right-hand corner, hit checklist. And here's everything that we do in these phases here, in these stages in the transaction. And then I can add more, I can edit, I can delete, I can reorder, I can assign, right? And by the way, one of the biggest opportunities, and some of us might, I don't remember if I talked about this last week, so forgive me if I'm saying stuff twice. However, let me go back because I missed something here, critical. Is when you click on client updates. So every single time that you want to have anything go out with the transaction, and say that you got step 1, 2, 3 done, this is what a template of the email that's going to go out to your client. Hey, what's going on? First and last name. We've checked off things off the list. Here's a summary of tasks completed for 123 Main Street, right? Your information, blah, 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 blah.
Okay, I have to pause right now and pick my jaw up off the floor. So what you're showing us right now is exactly what I need, and I didn't know this was possible. So to go back one step where you had all those steps in, like the first 10 days, the first, whatever, was that already in there, or you had to make that to match the other sheet you already made, the Excel sheet?
Great question. So this is prior to command. So my assistant and I, back in like 2000 and maybe 14 or 15, we created this step-by-step checklist on how we wanted the deal to go. And then command came out and opportunities came out in command. And then even more so, the checklist approach in opportunities came out. And I was like, oh, snap. No longer do we need to have the Excel sheet. We can have everything living in command. So what we did was I literally, let me go back one. I literally said, okay, well, let me set my business up. Because if you go to your command right now, you won't have this. You won't have escrow days 1 through 10. You won't have escrow days 11 through 20.
Nope.
21. I set this up personally because this is how I would prefer to run my own personal deals. So what we did is we literally just said, okay, let's break it up by the first 10 days. So, because you'll have multiple deals. And I built this to scale, meaning I want to know how many files that I have in the first 10 days of escrow. I want to know how many files we have at the first, second day, 10 days of escrow, or days 11 through 20, and days 21 through 30 and 30 and so on, plus and so on. So what we did then is said, okay, well, now I basically went to edit stages, and I edited by this. So you can literally come in here and edit whatever you want to name it.
Okay.
Right? And then you can reorder it by however you want to. And then you can come in here and then you can literally create. And so literally what we did was we copied each line, copied and pasted each line and pasted it into this. And that's literally what we did because it was already made. So we just said, you know what, might as well just go off of what it's built out. Let's just go ahead and see if man can work with us on this.
Can we ask if Ruben or one of the trainers can host? I mean, that may take multiple days to set this up, but this would be so life-changing.
Yeah, I think we can definitely do that. So I'll make a note of that for us to get Ruben to do maybe a conversation at our team meetings or yeah, definitely good question. Opportunities checklist training. Hey Ryan, you there? Ryan, just to make sure that I don't forget the sticky note that I'm putting in here. So he's not there. So, okay, so that's what I'll do. So I'll make sure that I'll send a note. We'll get that on the calendar for us to be able to do that. So I'm glad you found that valuable. And so, and obviously you can come in here, you can check whatever you want for it to go out to the client update, and then you can send that out, and then the client gets that email, and now the client is up to date. Why, Sandy, you may have an idea, and yet why might that be a big deal? What about that is going to help you and help the client?
Because it's going to save so much time to have systems. So I have just started to like put obviously we have to have things in command anyways when we have a transaction. So I put my things into command, but I feel like my systems are as good as Post-it notes or scattered papers all over. And I mean, I have a great TC. Sharon like picks up my pieces and makes sure it all happens. And then I work with Debbie. And so all of those support people are great, but I would just like to be like systematic, because when you're systematic, then you can take that time and energy to go revenue more. And if you want to run a business, you get your systems in order and you know how to work it and you know how to enter things. And so you're empowering yourself by learning it yourself, not just having someone else do it for you, but learning it and setting it up and then systematize it.
That's a great point. That's a really good point. And you mentioned something, saving time. Right? Not only saving yourself time, save the client time, meaning if the client can expect these emails twice a week or so, 3 times a week, I mean, how many phone calls do you not have to have?
Right. And you did say earlier, like there's more communication is always better. There's no such thing as too much communication in a transaction. And I think, different communications needed for buyers or sellers, but it would allow you to make sure that to not overlook someone and make sure they get, and then still reach out with a personal phone call, just want to make sure you don't have any questions, but, and then it's professional looking, like every email is coming across kind of with the same template look. And it just screams professional. Like I just like the way that it could be the same type of service for all of your clients, not like, okay, I had 5 clients, I could barely get through your transaction, versus I had 1 and I gave you white glove service because I had only 1. So it could make it really impactful.
So such a good point. Most agents feel all over the place when opening 2, 3, 4, 5 escrows. At the same time, if you've ever felt that or done it before, you feel how much it could tug on you. And yet it's because we don't have systems in place. We're taking all that mental energy to remember what we have to do. And we're like, and you're like you mentioned, sticky notes, and we're writing it down, and there's no formal process. And so one of the reasons I truly love Command, and honestly, I'll tell you, we personally could do more with Command, and yet I personally haven't made. I've made the decision to train more to it because I know the possibility versus to use it myself. Like my team's using it. My personal business is in it. I would say we're using it really well. However, we're not even touching the bottom of what it could do for scaling our business. Without a doubt, when you add in the marketing ability to the contact relationship management, to the opportunity transaction to close process, to the designing factor, being able to create marketing materials, getting things up on social media and market to create additional business. I mean, it's just, and that's just the start. There's more coming, and there's more created every single day, just about. And so it goes right back to mastery, right? It goes right back to, are we in mastery of this process and staying in curiosity? And obviously, we all have lives, we all have a lot going on, and that I would really encourage all of us here to utilize the systems that we've got in house. So yeah, we'll definitely set that training up so that way we can make sure that we're all dialed into this, because honestly, I love every inch of Command, and I believe that we can. It's just getting started. Great point. Any other thoughts on that? Any other thoughts on that checklist, that system, and how it's going to save us all time? Any other thoughts?
I do.
Yes.
Sometimes we'll have a seller like I have right now that's like really hard to get a hold of, works a lot of hours, and that checklist, if we can email the process out to them, they can look at it at their leisure.
That's true. So that seller checklist, yeah, they can look at it, and also they could see what you're doing on your behalf, right, or on their behalf. Meaning,
Right.
when people say, "Hey, what do I get for 6%?" and you have a whole list of different things, and we can go right back to that in command right now. And I think I exited out, so forgive me. However, we can go right back to that, meaning that if you said, okay, in the first 10 days of escrow, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm going to do 20 different things to get you and your property sold, get your property sold within whatever, right? I'm move you through the process. And I did a count, and I was able to come up with saying that Mr. and Mrs. Seller, for that 6% that you can pay me, do you know that I'm going to oversee personally over 90 different tasks that have to go right in order for you to get your property sold? Right. So, I mean, just to be able to quantify how much you're going to have to do, 90 different tasks, and each one having a different degree of difficulty as a result of the implementation. So until we're able to really quantify what we're doing, and that came about just by entering things simply into that checklist form and then adding it over to command and being able to see personally what it is that we're working on. Powerful, game changer. Thank you for that, Lorraine. Great point. What else? Anything else on that note? Anything else? Yeah, so we've got, as we wrap up here, right, wrap towards, we got an open dialogue here with Derek. Appreciate you jumping in here with us. And so wanted to come to you, Derek, man, and kind of pick your brain on, because today we've been talking about, the closing process, right? And so let me share my screen here. And so now we're at the end of this process here, right? So, you and I left off at the listing consultation. So we talked about servicing marketing. We talked about offer negotiations, contract to close, and post-close systems. So, out of curiosity to you, for you, let's go right back to the offers and negotiations, right? And let's look at that. And you said this, and I heard you say it through somebody else, right? It's kind of like that whole telephone game. And it's like, all right, let's go right back to the source. And you said something about how important relationships are in this market, negotiating with other agents and working and partnering through other agents. What is your perspective on the partnership that we have and we get to have with other agents, and how other agents can make our jobs easier or make our jobs tougher? What are your thoughts? You're muted.
Yeah.
There you go. Wait. There you go.
Okay. So first of all, I think it's a great question. But I also wrote down a word that you just had. Well, I'll answer the question that you asked, but I think we need to get to the problem regarding the listing consultation and the marketing. Okay. You said a word 7 minutes ago called quantify, and I'm going to circle back to that. How important do I think the relationships are? I don't need to tell anybody that. Okay, I think that they know. I will just tell you this. I taught at 23 Keller Williams market centers, okay, in a 2-year period.
Mm-hmm.
My wife asked me, how much are you getting paid? And I said, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Today.
Mm-hmm.
It came down to, but we made about $275,000 last year based on our reputation, where people chose our offers, guy at Remax Top Producers, somebody at Central and King, just on who we are. So I think it's very important. I would also tell you this, from on the buy side, you got to do whatever you can do to separate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that like serious as a heart attack. So we submitted an offer on a property on 125 Eisenhower, and it's listed with Keller Williams in Yorba Linda, gal named Stephanie. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I taught for that market center twice over the last year. So she knew who I was. Okay.
Stephanie Rizak.
That's her.
Yep.
Okay. But Brian, if you were to call Stephanie up today, call my bluff and say, hey, what happened when you walked into your office yesterday to get those 14 offers? She said, there was a bouquet of white roses here that said, even if the offer stinks, I pay attention to detail. Okay. So what I'm saying is this, she said very clearly, she says, Derek, my sellers aren't going to take your offer because you sent me flowers. I go, I know that. She goes, but I will tell you, out of the 14 offers, you're one of 3 agents that picks up their phone or even called me, and you're the only person in 17 years that's ever sent me flowers. I know it's your seller's decision. I just want you to know I'm on point. I got a good shot. Does that make sense from an offer presentation? You got to do something to stand out.
Yep.
And my standpoint is this, if you're doing less than 20, 30 deals a year, 40, 50 deals a year, you got an offer, you should go sit in the lobby of the agent, present your offer. I get it, DocuSign, Glide, I go sit in the office. I want it more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. How are you going to stand out? That's really good.
How are you going to stand out?
Yeah, you mentioned something about going back to quantify.
Yeah, I mean, look, we had to ask ourselves some really good questions, and we rated ourselves from average, good, great, and elite. Okay, and what it takes to go from great to elite. And we asked ourselves the questions that every agent thinks about, and some will go 10 to 15 years, go 30 years in a career, and they never answer it. Okay. So when you said quantify, and Brian, it sounds great. Okay. And you're a tremendous leader, but it sounds great. Hey, tell them the 90 things you do. Here's the problem. Anybody in any real estate office has never written a marketing plan for a seller.
Nope.
Anybody want to be honest with us?
No. Yeah. Well, and so we talked about that, right? And so like even having something as simple that's already written out, right? Written out and updated to where we are in this market, having looked at it, right? Having touched it and updating it. If you just update it every once in a while and say, here's my marketing plan, here's what I do, just having it goes a long way.
So how much time do we have?
So for you got 30 minutes, 30 to 45.
No, I'm not going to take that much time.
Yeah, let's go for it.
But I am going to let you know, this is what our listing presentation now looks like. Okay. And when I say that, this is what that thick. Okay. That quality. Okay. Word for word, everything that we do, what our points of difference are, questions you should ask a real estate agent. 3 months building the best listing presentation that I could. 25 years, I said, I'm going to build out the best listing presentation. So I can just say this, it is literally, this is the beta version, but this is what it looks like. It's got tabs, it's got everything that we do, and we don't tell people what we don't do. We only put in things that we actually do.
We talked about that earlier, right?
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you have anything about open houses? Get that out of there. Open houses, we're not doing that right now, right? Do you have anything about virtual or do you have anything about caravans? Get that out of there.
Yeah.
We're not doing caravans right now, right? Keep it up to date. So I love that. What else?
Well, I just think that, you need to, first of all, you need to build out a listing presentation. Okay.
Yep.
And you also need to figure out what services that you offer a client. And you need to figure out what services you offer a client that are unique. So I can tell you this, I mean, I looked at a lot of listing presentations and I spent 3 months building this out, and I wrote down every word and every system and every step. And we ended up building out our in-house concierge service. We ended up building in our own marketing in social media department. I mean, we built out like a Michael Lewis marketing bar ourselves. Okay. But when you go on, when we go to speak with a seller, it's not only gonna look professional, but we'll be able to tell them if they say, what do you do to sell my house? We can't wait for that question to be answered. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I think the moral of the story is, guys, you need to figure out what you do to market a home. And if it's 2 things, 20 things, 200 things, okay? You need to be able to tell them that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, strong. Appreciate that.
So Derek, a quick question. Do you send like a pre-listing something via email and then show up with a hard copy? Like, how do you physically present this to them?
So that's a fantastic question, Sandra. So first of all, I'm gonna just do a total authentic thing, okay? I haven't been asked what I do to sell a home for 15 years, okay? However, I decided that with the new models and things like that, and also because it was gonna keep me at a certain level, that wasn't good enough. And if I lose one listing presentation, that's one listing presentation too much. So we completely I've spent 6 months and we're almost done, but I'll tell you what it looks like now, Sandra, okay? So we put together a digital listing, pre-listing presentation. We call it a digital seller slide deck, okay? So we have a digital one. We are now taking that over to look like a flip magazine. You've seen that on Issue and stuff like that, but we're not using that because, you know, we copyrighted our material. But I would tell you this, you need to have something digitally, even if it's scanned pieces of paper, that the minute you get a seller lead, that goes out right away. Okay? That make sense?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So that goes out right away. We also have that in hard copy version. So we can mail it or email it, okay? Our listing presentation will be complete in about a month. But when I show up at a listing presentation, I'm gonna have all of this. It's got an iPad carrier that I'm gonna have a digital listing presentation, okay? If they wanna go digital, I can do it on an iPad, okay? And then I'm gonna have a magazine that we're custom building. So that's a pretty strong listing presentation.
Mhm.
That make sense?
Yeah.
So yes, I think you need to have a pre-listing packet, and I just think it needs to be very concise, and I think it needs to be sent. Okay?
Love it. Thank you.
Great point. Thank us for that question, Sandy. So let's talk about, Derek. I mean, obviously, you've been a pro for a while. How long? Forever, right? How long do you how do you manage the multiple seller transactions, right? And the multiple deals that you've got going on, always having pendings, always having, right, coming soon. Like, what's a great way that you could share with our folks, maybe around organization, that would help them be more organized in their transaction to close process?
Okay, so, and this is just going to be a common theme, okay? So 2021, I have spent about 60%, 70% of my time. My production will be way down this year. So I'm going to let you know, it's going to be way down. I spent 60 to 70% of my time building a company, okay? So not out representing buyers and sellers. I do think, for Brian, who's been around, probably knows the name Mark Spain, I think that there's going to be a hockey, how he went from 30 people to 300 people. I think there's going to be an effect. So that's why I'm doing it. What I would say directly to that answer, though, is we looked at, so first of all, I don't negotiate my own offers, okay? I haven't for years. Okay, so I have somebody that's been with me 17 years, knows how to do it, the whole ball of wax, so even selects the offer. Okay, but what I would say is this, what we've implemented, what I would always want to ask Brian is, what have you learned in the last 30 days that you're putting in motion right now? Okay, and we got this from a company, an agent. We got 2 good ideas from an agent, from different agents. One at Seven Gables Real Estate in Tustin, and one at Keller Williams Mission Viejo.
Only agent at Seven Gables would be worth talking to would be Odell.
Yeah, I don't know who it was. So here's what I would tell you from this standpoint. We're putting an addendum together inside the MLS that says this: submit your highest in offer first. Highest in offer, you may not be countered. Please do not call to try to get inside information. I mean, we're going to be diplomatic about it, but we're trying to eliminate that. The other thing that we're implementing, just from an ease standpoint, is we're getting all the disclosures, everything put as attachments in the MLS. So, it's lock, stock, and barrel. We're going to try to get NHD ordered, Section 1 termite. We're just getting everything done. So we're not doing that right now. So what I would say is this: I applaud you guys for being on this call, because the guy talking is probably the biggest student, and he's looking at, oh, those guys do that great. We're going to do that too. Okay. So we're trying to simplify the transaction. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Simplifying as much as you can. So from what I'm hearing is that, you've got a strategic set of, say, procedures that you set for your contracts to close. So, how about client communication in that process? How's it going? Just keeping the clients up to date. Is there something that, best practices that you found? What is it that you could do that you would advise or share about managing seller expectations?
Okay, well, I would say this. My standard protocol for 20 years was, and it still is that anybody, even if I don't handle my transactions, I don't handle negotiations, I will just still call the client once a week. Okay. And I tell them in advance, I'm just going to call to check in. A team that does everything else. I'm just going to call to check in, just so you hear my voice. And even before I had a team that does that, I would just call them. And I would tell them in advance, sometimes I'm just going to call you to check in, not tell you that there's any activity. Mm-hmm. Okay. What I would tell you is, so that's very important. We are going to, and I dropped in when you said, hey, command, I think we're implementing the fact that we're going to be logging in the other agent, our client, escrow, title. We're going to be logging them into the transaction, like on an online experience. Mm-hmm. Because I just, Redfin pioneered that a while ago, and you can do it on online banking. You got to do it in a real estate transaction. I think that's going to solve a lot of it. Okay.
Yeah. Solve a lot of the questions, because something that we talked about earlier is just how much time that saves you, and something that you talked about that reminded me of something that I remember doing personally when I was in the deal, is I would let my sellers know that, hey, you're going to get a call from me every Thursday afternoon. All right, it's my check-in call. And so, meaning that's when we're going to talk about how things are going, how are your showings, get your feedback. We're going to talk about the transaction. We're going to, make sure that, whatever, we're going to see whatever's going on with the competition. So every Thursday afternoon, that's when we're checking in. So setting that expectation, from what I'm hearing you say, setting that expectation early and often is going to be a big key of that. And so, as we wrap it out, what are your thoughts around, how do you work to create a client for life, right? Meaning that, whether it be your post-close systems, anything that you would feel, okay to share about, your mentality about, your thought going into the transaction, following up through the transaction, resolving issues, so that way you have a client for life, getting those referrals, et cetera.
Okay. So this is going to sound kind of funny, because statistically wise, since 2004, I have done anywhere from 45 to 65, somewhere in that range, referral deals per year for 17 years. Yeah. Okay. So it's brought in about 600,000 personal GCI to me per year. And I would also say this: I've been lousy at it. Okay. So there's a ton of upside. I do think that I give people very straightforward, honest opinion. I do think that I tell people to walk away. I do think that, what I taught on this morning, I said, look, I don't care if your buyer's not going to accept that appraisal contingency, don't tell the listing agent, yeah, no appraisal contingency. And then even though you have the other 17 days to back out, don't do that. You're going to ruin your name. And you're not going to sleep well for the first 17 days. I think I've done a good job of that. I have about 4,000 past clients. Okay. And I've done a lousy job of that. And I'm spending 6 months doing that. Okay. I do not have a good system in place. I know what it looks like. Okay. But I do not have a good system in place.
So what would you advise, knowing that, right, of that, right? No, what would you say, like the not to do's, right? There's a lot of wisdom in the not to do's, right? Don't. Right? So what would you say, like, in terms of mistakes that you've made that you may want to share with our folks of here's what to look out for personally?
Well, look, I mean, these are excuses, but I could say that it wasn't just because I'm lazy or I'm not smart that this took place. It's not an excuse, but I was the first Redfin partner agent in 2008 in the US. And when they turned on that website outside of Seattle, I had like 67 leads. So I did not have time to be the perfect CRM master. I landed these builder accounts. It went nuts. And then Invitation Homes, I was selling 30 to 35 homes a month personally. So thank goodness I've been blessed to be extremely busy. Not an excuse, but what I would say is look, it is coming back to technology is going faster with Zillow being a brokerage, all this stuff. You hear the build a moat around. I'm telling you what I'm going to do for the last 6 months. I'm getting every single client in CRM, 33 touch, and absolutely spending my time calling those people and cultivating those relationships, your tribe. Okay. What I would just say, I've got a bigger problem than you. I've got 4,000 people. Some I've got email addresses, some I've got names, some I don't have addresses, some have moved to Michigan. So if you've got 200, 150, 10 past clients, 20 people on center of influence, don't make the mistake that I did and have the wheels go off and then have to spend 6 months with you and an assistant putting it together. Okay. So do it from the start.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from that, Derek, is like for us starting, I mean, obviously you have a different problem, which is a great problem to have. But for us starting, you would say, put the time in right now, get the system in place right now.
Yeah. And Sandra, I was religious with this for the first 5 years of my business. I was religious and I went from a shoebox to a floppy disk for top producer. And I was religious with it. And that's how I got to, $1 million GCI in my 5th year.
Yeah.
But then I got quote unquote, air quote, too busy. Okay. And it's the biggest mistake that I've made in my career. Okay. And I can just say this. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old and 2 golden retriever dogs. One's a puppy. And I came to the conclusion that I can't be driving out to Beaumont. I can't be doing this. I needed to create, quote unquote, Tom Ferry, a business by design. So what does that design mean? Well, I need to do business with people that I know. Okay. Because then there's less lead follow-up. There's less, I'm not taking an hour. I mean, I just did the math. And then I said, for the first time next year, I'm going to do geographical farming for the first time ever. Okay. I've always been expireds, builders, hedge funds, I got to do geographical farming. Why is that? Because I'd rather go to Phillips Ranch, Chino Hills and drive to like Tustin or Beaumont or Pasadena to get a listing. Because, I only have so many hours while my kids are young. Okay.
And not to mention too, that hedge funds, builders, all of those other organizations, they're going to go where the lowest price point is. They will cut the person out at times. I mean, if they feel like they can still get the deal done, save the money, cut the person out, they will. So being the neighborhood expert is going to be valuable.
Let me just tell you this, 1,000%. Okay. I was doing closeouts for builders at 2.5%. It went down to 2%. Then it went down to 1%. Now it's nothing. Okay. Then they said, they said, we're going to give you closeout business. What does that mean? I mean, we're going to give you contingency business. What does that mean? What that means, Sandra, is if you walk into Tri-Point or Pulte or KB and you have a house to sell, they were referring it out to Derek. And I had a good gig. There's only 2 really, Ceci Pagano had some business in Orange County. There's only a couple of people that really were in the space, but I had the market share. But here's what happened is this year, builders are not taking contingencies. So about $390,000 of my income got wiped off the table.
Right.
And hedge funds, you know, I made $3.3 million in GCI in about 2 years. They stopped buying when the market got hot. What I'm saying is this. I'm not saying don't go after the builders, don't go after the hedge funds, don't go after credit unions, don't go after divorce attorneys. You should have probably 4 staples to 5 staples and then 5 other sources of business, no more than that. But your past client, that's your business. Okay. And it's taken me 25 years to figure that one out.
Well, and you said something, I mean, very powerful. I also heard, be ready to pivot, because the market the business you think you have may not be there tomorrow. There's a lot of conversation around about who moves the cheese right now, and you need to be moving the cheese in your own personal business by staying top of mind with your own past clients, right? Gary Keller says your business is your database, know your people, SOI database, all that. And yet also stay intuitive enough with the marketplace to know where the cheese is moving, right? And so what I'm hearing you say also, Derek, is from that standpoint is you continue to move, right? Because you never know when a source of business might dry out. You never know.
And what I would say is, you know, obviously I work for the man, so I believe he's smart. Your business is your database. This is one thing that I would just tell you, this has been my focus. Eventually I'm going to sell my business. Okay. So I'm building a brokerage within a brokerage, and I'm eventually going to sell it. Okay. I'm going to parcel off the 4-unit buildings that are going to be under movement residential. I'm going to sell everything else. Okay. The number one value though, people think, oh, it's the agents. The number one value inside of my business will be my personal database.
Yeah.
And for me to build equity in my company, okay, what I would say, Sandra, is this. If you had 100 past clients that 10 of them rolled over a year or 20 rolled over, you had 200 people and 20 rolled over, that was $200,000 a year. Somebody may value that stronger than my business with Pulte, TriPoint, or KB or Meritage, because mine, if they get a new sales manager, he may bring in his buddy. That's unstable. Okay. So I just looked at this from a business person. If I build a strong database, all this other stuff's going to be gravy. Okay. But yeah, that's going to be the focus.
And your clients that you have are real people with lives that evolve. So you could easily tap into information for them as they turn 55, Prop 19, information for legacy wealth building by investment properties, other states, referral network. I mean, there's just like the, you know, refer a lawyer, you know, do you need a trust? Because everybody should have a trust if you own property. Let's get your kids into a house when they get married. You know, I mean, you could continue to grow them too as their needs change through their lifetime. So you could become their lifetime expert friend realtor. You know, that's great.
You know, just one other thing on that. I don't want to run over, but just one other thing on that. 2 things on that. So on that note, Gary Keller had a mastermind about 2 months ago, and he talked about, and I forgot the name of the gentleman that was on, but he talked about how do you monetize. It's not a bad thing. You monetize by giving service, but how do you monetize your client after the sale of the home? Home maintenance program, whatever it may be. He said, how do you provide service to them on an ongoing basis? One of them. The other thing that I would tell you is this, you know, we're building out this magazine. Okay. It's going to cost me a lot of money, and it's not going to be for distribution, and we're figuring out the advertising stuff like that. Okay. But it's going to be for, shows that it's going to be a quality part. But somebody says, hey, you know, Compass in Beverly Hills, the agency in Beverly Hills, or, you know, Sotheby's down in, you know, Sean, these are the guys that have magazines. And my response was this, okay, because one of the areas that I'm going to figure out how to get into the next 2 years is price point over $1 million. It's not rocket science. And we all know guys, you know, Alex Zhao here in Chino Hills, John Ball's not, I mean, these are great guys, friends of mine, but they're not like Harvard dudes. Okay. So it can be done. But my response is this, is luxury is a level of service. Luxury is attention to detail. luxury is, you know, how you treat people. Luxury is quality.
Yeah.
And if you provide that at 600,000, you're going to get called up to the big leagues. Sense? Focus on being a luxury brand, regardless of the price point. Let me just say something. And I've looked at a lot of the high-end brokerages, Douglas Elliman. I looked at their marketing stuff. I said, we're going to build something big. So this right here, when we build this out, that looks luxury. Okay. And that looks luxury. Presentation, we're going to do a video, personalized website, 3D floor plan. This looks luxury. Okay. So I said, let's build out luxury right now. And let's present luxury to the $700,000 client.
They say if you build it, they will come. There you go.
Yeah, you know, and I love the mindset around that, and because that's where, you know, we're talking about where's the ball going, right? Where's the puck going? And then meeting the necessary marketing standard approach necessary is there. So you know, to wrap up, Derek, let's go ahead and put a nice bow tie on this, man. A nice little bow around it. What would you say would be, say, the top few things any one of our team members could do to fortify their mindset to be that top listing agent for the next however many years that they want to do it for? What would be the top thing?
I'd only say one thing, and I've said this since I was blue in the face, okay? And I built this whole listing presentation around this one question. People enter the real estate industry and they leave the real estate industry without ever answering this one question. Why should I hire you? And when they get asked, they can wing it. They can figure it out. They can say these things. They can say points of difference. But it's not clear, concise, etc. So I think that you need to develop a listing presentation and a buyer presentation where you actually can tell the client when you're with the client, this is why you should hire me, okay? And I'm not going to go through this, but we have in our listing presentation, we have something called points, which are our points of difference, which I can turn to. Results, teamwork, promise, guaranteed sale program, cash offer program, concierge program, reputation, technology, one-stop shop. I mean, we have these things where we can say, this is what's different than the guy at Remax. Okay. And then I can also just say this. If we don't get the listing signed, we're going to hand them, Brian, get this. We have a list of questions to interview agents.
Yep. Make it extremely difficult.
If we don't get it, we hand the seller, here's a list of questions to answer, and here are our answers to those questions. Fire away when the next agent comes.
Yep. Yep.
If they see me pulling away, they don't even want to go in the next, they don't even want to be the next agent.
Right. Call it a day. Right. You leave a trail of devastation behind you for anybody coming in regards to agents coming in. I'd say that with fun. That's great, man. Derek, thank you for that. And, you know, I know that, by the way, I mean, it's a process, it's a journey. And the beautiful thing about business, I mean, you've been after it for decades, Derek, is that you're never done, right? It's just as soon as you think that it's finished, you cobbled it together, the game has changed. And so you're always on your toes, always working to develop and regrow, right? Recapitalize, all the above. Gary Keller is doing that right now with Keller Williams at a grand scale. And so I don't know if enough people are watching his chess moves and yet really just seeing, okay, what is this guy doing and how can I mimic that in my own personal world? All right, what is he doing and how can I mimic that in my own personal world? And you can mimic a lot of what he's doing straight down to your personal real estate sales business as well. So, you know, with that being said, any last, what ahas, what takeaways? Let's open it up. I like to call ahas, you know, agents helping other agents. And so what are the key takeaways from our session? Let's get a top three.
I think my first takeaway is I never can go follow Derek in a listing presentation to a client. That's my first. I got to go way before him.
Yeah, go before Derek on a listing presentation. That's a good takeaway. What else? Lorraine.
I think that when Derek said about having being too busy, it is a good thing, but it can be a bad thing.
Yep.
Especially if you don't have quality assistants helping you. So to me, it's like you shouldn't take more than you can chew. You shouldn't eat more than you can chew.
Without a doubt, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a very, very good thing. But what I would say is, I'm going to agree with Lorraine. Well, I'm going to agree with her. But what I would say is this. You want to be busy. I want to do $1 billion sales. But here's what I'll tell you. You have to spend time. Unfortunately, I'm doing it now. You have to spend a lot of time on systems and procedures so you don't come across too busy to your clients.
Yeah.
They don't want you too busy. I'm just letting you know. My family doesn't want me too busy. I got to make this thing look like freaking easy.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And one other thing on that, I would just say this. I'm very fortunate to speak and teach a lot. Okay. And I'm very fortunate about it. But if you ever listen, and if these are ever taped, because they've been taped a lot, you're going to hear me focus on all of the things that I got to improve on and all the things that I'm making mistakes on. It's always where my focus is. This goes back to that Tony Robbins, I mean, constant. Look, I don't care about the things I'm good at. I really want to know, hey, these are the things that suck right now that I got to make a major improvement. And when you focus that becomes fun. Okay.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And so, yeah, you kind of got my mind going on a tangent on that. And so I'll gather my thought. And so one more key takeaway. Agents helping other agents. What ahas do you have? Share that perspective. James.
Oh, I was gonna say that whole checklist. I think that was like a huge aha. Like that, just setting like you. Or I think Derek already said it. Systems. That is one I need to set up. Yeah, just all of that.
Love that. Good deal. All right, everybody. I'm giving you some time back today, and thanks for participating in our second edition of here, Win with Sellers. And Derek, big thank you to you, man, for taking the time out. And
Can I leave the group with one thought?
Drop the mic for us, man.
I'll drop the mic. And this is not my mic. This is Jeff Bezos's mic.
Yeah, let's do it.
And Jeff Bezos wrote his last letter as CEO and chairman to the board on Amazon. Okay. And if you read any of the remarks of it, he talked a lot about where his company can improve. It's got a lot of room for improvement. And that was number one that I looked at. Number two is he always talked about the world. So he never said, hey, I want to be just a little bookseller. He always talked about, we want to be the best employer in the world. We want to be the safest employer in the world. He was just a guy, online books, but he was thinking about the world. So you can't be afraid to think big, okay? You can't be afraid. But the words that I wrote down, and I really thought about this, is he said these little 5 words, and I just want you to write these down, okay? These 5 words. And this is Jeff Bezos. This is not Derek Oy, but it really inspired me. And it's about your customers, your family, your market center. It's got a little JFK in it. And he just wrote these 5 words. Create more than you consume. While you're on this planet, create more than you consume.
I love that. That's big. That's big. Yeah, that's big. That's in direct. That's in. So Derek, tell me what does that mean to you?
So I'll tell you the thumbnail sketch. I told Sandra I haven't used the listing presentation for 15 years. I spent 6 months and a lot of my time building this stuff out. I have a team and I need to give that team value. Okay. So I'm building these things out so I can create more than I can consume. I get a portion of their brokerage fee, but I want to create more than they can ever pay me for. Okay. I want to create more in as far as jobs, creating income for people and all those things, then I consume. Okay.
It's big. That's real big. All right, everybody, let's keep our minds going on that thought. Go out there, and if you haven't grabbed lunch yet, grab some lunch, put some energy back in your brain, and finish out the day strong. And don't forget, we still have a listing contest going on for the second quarter. So we're armed for that. Go out there and get it. Real quick, Ryan, can we throw it on the radar for us to get Ruben Bravo, that trainer, for us to train our agents, sales meeting or stakeholder meeting or not, up to us, and Ruben on his schedule to train on opportunities, specifically the checklist. So if we can reach out to Ruben on that, that'd be great. And for our May, let's add it to our May calendar. So checklist opportunity class on how to set it up and work opportunities at a high level. You'd be making a lot of new friends here. All right, everybody, let's go out and get it. Let's have a great rest of your day. Stay well, and catch you on the flip side. Stakeholder meeting tomorrow, 3 o'clock. Don't forget it.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.